The galaxy's most feared arena was alive with chaos and thunder, walls shaking with the sound of alien chants and roars as warriors clashed inside the glowing battlefield, weapons cutting through the air, blades sparking against shields, plasma rifles firing bursts of energy that lit the crowd's hungry faces. The atmosphere was heavy with bloodlust and pride, for this was the place where empires proved their strength, and today was no different. Yet something strange was about to happen. The announcer's deep metallic voice cut through the noise, commanding silence as it declared the next challenger. The crowd expected another beast, another armored alien dripping with power, but instead a thin figure walked out of the shadowed gate, a human, no glimmer of armor, no blade in hand, no gun strapped to his back, only plain clothes and empty hands. The silence was thick for a moment, then shattered by waves of laughter. Mocking cheers rolling down from the stands, voices jeering about weakness and fragility, alien mouths hissing that this match would end before it even began, and yet the human did not flinch. He walked slowly into the sand, eyes steady, jaw set, his fists rising as if that was enough, as if bare hands could stop the weapons of the galaxy. It was madness to them. The announcer himself hesitated before letting the gong echo across the battlefield, the sound of fate beginning. Still the human only stood, watching the gates opposite him grind open. From the shadows a reptilian warrior emerged, scales thick like armor, eyes glowing red, muscles coiled beneath black skin. In his clawed hand, he carried an axe glowing with molten energy, a weapon that had spilled blood of dozens before. The crowd erupted again, shouting for a quick kill, many already turning away certain of the ending, but the human did not move. He only breathed, calm, steady, eyes locked on the reptile. As though he had studied 1,000 battles in his mind, the reptile roared, charging forward, the axe swinging in a deadly arc that could have split stone. The air trembled with its speed, but then something happened the crowd did not expect. The human moved, not with the clumsy panic they imagined, but with a speed sharp and smooth, his body twisting just out of reach. The axe slammed into the sand, throwing dust, and before the reptile could lift it again, the human's hand struck, a simple motion, but powerful, fingers driving into the weak spot beneath the reptile's scaled arm. The creature roared in pain, stumbling back. The crowd gasped. A single strike from a bare hand had broken through, and the human did not stop. He pressed forward, moving like flowing water, dodging each deadly swing, every breath perfectly timed, his hands striking again and again, not wild, not random, but precise, trained, each hit aimed at joints, nerves, weak points no alien ever thought of guarding. The reptile grew angrier, his swings heavier, faster, but his strength turned against him. The axe became slow compared to the human's speed, and soon the crowd could not laugh. They leaned forward, eyes wide as they watched the reptile stumble, blood dripping from his wounds, roars turning to gasps of pain. Still the human moved, silent and steady, no taunts, no fear, only focus. And then the moment came. The reptile swung down hard, a strike meant to end everything, but the human caught the handle with his bare hands, muscles straining, the axe trembling, and with a shout that carried through the arena, he twisted, pulled, and the mighty weapon flew from the alien's grip, crashing into the ground. The human did not take it. He did not need it. Instead, he stepped in close, his fists hammering into the reptile's chest and neck, faster than the eye could follow. The alien's knees buckled. His body collapsed into the dust. The crowd was silent, utterly silent, staring at the impossible. A human with no blade, no gun, no armor had brought down a warrior feared. Across systems, all with nothing but hands, the announcer's voice cracked with disbelief as he declared the victor. But the human did not celebrate. He only lowered his fists, breathing heavy but calm, eyes scanning the thousands who watched him, as if daring them to laugh again. The silence lasted long, then whispers began, spreading like fire, questions, doubts, fear. What were human hands? What kind of strength hid in them? The alien leaders frowned, their pride shaken, for they had mocked the human at first, believing him weak. Yet now they saw something new, something dangerous, a power that needed no weapon to reveal itself, and as the human walked back toward the gate, shadows closing around him, the crowd could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The arena had seen monsters, blades, and guns, but never something like this, never the quiet power of bare human hands. And deep in their hearts they knew the galaxy had just changed forever. The arena was still buzzing with whispers after the first fight, the air thick with disbelief. Aliens turning to one another asking the same question again and again. How could bare hands defeat a warrior armed with weapons forged in fire? No one had ever seen such a thing, and yet the human had walked back through the gate alive and unbroken. Some claimed it was luck. Others whispered darkly that perhaps humans had some hidden trick. But deep inside every witness there was unease, because they knew what they had seen was real. Meanwhile, inside the waiting chambers beneath the arena, the human sat quietly on a stone bench, his knuckles bruised but steady, his chest rising and falling in calm rhythm. His name was Daniel, and though the galaxy thought him weak, he carried something no weapon could give: years of discipline, training, and an understanding of the body that no alien warrior had ever studied. His eyes closed as he breathed, shutting out the roar of the crowd above, for he knew this was only the first battle, and that many more would follow. Already the organizers of the games were plotting, angry whispers in their council room. Their reputations were on the line. Never before had the arena been mocked by a challenger who refused weapons. If this human's victory spread across the galaxy, it would make them look weak, so they planned to humiliate him, to end him quickly in the next round. While in the stands, powerful alien nobles argued. Some demanded the human be banned, saying he was dangerous in ways they could not predict. Others insisted the games must go on, for the galaxy wanted blood, and besides, how long could a fragile human last against the champions of empires? The decision was made. The next round would not wait. Daniel would fight again that very night, and the gate opened once more with a groaning sound. The announcer's voice, though less confident now, shouted across the arena, "Behold, the next challenger, champion of the Kreth Alliance, master of chains and shadow, the breaker of bones, Vorik the Silent." The crowd cheered again, though quieter than before, and from the opposite gate a massive figure emerged, tall as two men, his body wrapped in dark metal chains that glowed faintly with energy, each link a weapon, each swing a storm of destruction. His face was hidden behind a mask of bone, only his yellow eyes glowing. Vorik raised his arms and the chains rattled, the ground shaking with their weight. The crowd erupted in cheers and chants of his name, but all eyes flicked back to the human, wondering if this time fear would show on his face. But Daniel only stepped forward, fists rising once more. No armor, no blade, no shield, just his body. The announcer's voice boomed, "Begin," and the fight erupted. Vorik moved with terrifying speed for his size, the chains whistling through the air, a storm of spinning steel that would have crushed stone walls. But Daniel ducked low, rolling across the sand, the chains slamming down inches from where he had stood, sparks flying, dust exploding upward. The crowd gasped, some rising to their feet. Daniel moved again, weaving like a shadow, each strike of the chains missing by a breath, yet each movement draining his energy. Vorik laughed, a deep sound behind his mask, swinging harder and harder, confident that no human body could last long under such pressure. But Daniel's eyes studied him. Every step, every breath, he saw the rhythm in Vorik's swings, the slight delay when the chain looped back, the fraction of a second when his body leaned too far. It was a dance, and Daniel was learning its music. Finally, when the chains came down again with a roar, Daniel stepped in, closer than anyone dared. The chains whistled past his back as he moved inside the storm, his fist striking hard into Vorik's ribs, then his elbow slamming into the masked jaw. The giant stumbled back, stunned. The crowd roared in shock. No one had ever stepped into Vorik's chains and lived, but the human had, and he had struck true. Daniel did not retreat. He pressed forward, hands flying with precision, each strike aimed where the chains could not protect, each movement fast and sharp. Vorik tried to grab him, massive hands reaching, but Daniel slipped free, twisting and striking again, a storm of fists against a mountain of flesh. The crowd's cheers turned to silence again, fear spreading in their throats, because they were seeing it again, the impossible. Finally, with one last strike, Daniel leapt forward, his fist crashing into the mask with such force it cracked, shattering across the sand. Vork's eyes rolled back and his massive body fell with a thud that shook the ground, the chains lying silent beside him. The arena was silent once more. The human stood over the fallen giant, breathing hard but unbroken, and the announcer's voice faltered as he declared the impossible again. Victor, the human. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, not in mocking, but in something else. Cheers mixed with fear, awe mixed with confusion. They had seen two champions fall to bare hands, and whispers began to spread like fire across the galaxy. Maybe humans were not weak. Maybe they were something far worse. As Daniel lowered his fists and turned back toward the gate, the nobles in the stands shifted uneasily, for they now understood this was no accident, no trick. This was strength they could not measure, and many began to wonder in silence if one human could do this with his hands alone. What would happen if all humans decided to rise? Above the arena, the air was heavy with silence, even after the human had returned to the waiting chambers. The crowd still buzzing with questions. No one could explain what they had just witnessed twice in a row. Two champions fallen not by weapons or machines, but by simple human hands. And already the whispers were traveling faster than light through the networks. Soldiers, traitors, and spies spreading the story of the weaponless man who crushed warriors of empires in the shadowed balconies. Above the common seats sat the true powers of the galaxy. Nobles, warlords, counselors, their jeweled robes glittering as they leaned toward each other, their voices hushed but tense. Some argued this was a trick. Perhaps the human had hidden strength enhancers beneath his skin. Others swore they saw nothing but flesh and bone. Still others grew pale with a memory. Reports from wars long ago where humans had fought with bare hands when their weapons broke, where enemies spoke of their stubborn refusal to fall, and while some dismissed it as myth, the truth now stood before them in living proof. In a small chamber behind thick doors, one council of warlords gathered quickly. Their leader, a scaled creature with four-burning eyes, slammed his claw against the table, declaring that if humans could fight like this, then their true armies must be far more dangerous. Another snarled that perhaps this human was not ordinary. Maybe he was some trained monster, but even then the danger was real. Because the crowd was watching, millions of eyes across the galaxy were seeing humans not as weaklings but as a force. The more he won, the more their old jokes would turn to fear, and fear had power. Back in the dim arena chambers, Daniel sat alone, his hands wrapped with cloth, his breathing steady. He had learned long ago to stay calm, to let his enemies burn their energy in rage while he saved his own. But even as he rested, he could feel the weight of the eyes above, watching, judging, plotting. He knew the fights were not simply games now. They were tests. Every move he made would ripple far beyond these walls. The door creaked and a figure entered, an alien servant, trembling, its small eyes darting. It placed a jug of water before him and whispered in broken words, They are afraid of you, human. Some want you dead quickly." Daniel looked at the servant, his gaze steady, and answered softly, "Then I must keep winning, because the more they fear, the less they will understand." The servant trembled and scurried out, leaving Daniel in silence once again. Above, the announcer's voice returned to the crowd, promising an even greater fight to come, and while the audience cheered in blind excitement, the nobles leaned back in their seats, calculating, some already sending secret orders to their fleets, some plotting to recruit the humans instead of fighting them, and others whispering that perhaps the galaxy had made a mistake in mocking Earth. Already seeds of doubt had been planted, seeds that would grow. Meanwhile, Daniel lifted his bruised hands again, flexing his fingers, preparing for what was to come, because he knew the next battle would not only test his body, it would decide whether humanity would be feared, hated, or respected across the stars. And as the drums of the arena pounded again above, Daniel's shadow stretched long against the stone wall, the shadow of a man carrying the weight of a species. Unknown to him, the galaxy's eyes had begun to shift from laughter to unease, and in the stands far above a cloaked figure whispered into a communicator. Do not underestimate humans, they fight with more than hands, they fight with something deeper. But his warning was swallowed by the roar of the crowd as the gates began to rise again, preparing to unleash yet another nightmare challenger into the sands where one man stood alone. The gates of the arena rumbled open, and the crowd erupted with a deafening roar as a figure emerged from the shadows. It was larger than any opponent before, a towering beast covered in black metal plates, its arms ending not in hands but in long curved blades that shimmered under the light. Its eyes burned with red fury as steam hissed from vents across its armor. The announcer's voice shook the air as he declared, "The monster of blades, undefeated, destroyer of 17 worlds, the alien." Spectators screamed in delight, finally believing this would be the end of the human. They jeered and mocked, throwing pieces of metal and food toward the sand. "No hands will save you now," they howled. "You are finished, little earthling." Daniel stood still in the center of the arena, his fists loose at his sides, his eyes calm as stone, the sand beneath his bare feet cold and rough. He studied the monster as it moved, slow at first, but each step shaking the ground like thunder, its blades scraping together, sending sparks flying. With each heavy breath the creature's chest rose like a mountain. Its presence alone was enough to terrify any normal fighter, but Daniel did not move. He let the silence grow until even the crowd leaned forward, waiting for him to act. The monster raised both arms and with a shriek charged, its blades swinging with enough force to slice stone in half. The air cracked with the sound, yet Daniel shifted only a little, a sidestep so smooth that the blade barely missed him by a whisper. The crowd gasped. The monster turned quickly, faster than something so large should move. Again its blades came down. Again Daniel slipped away with a twist of his body, his movements not rushed, not panicked, almost like a dance. Each step light, each turn precise. While the monster's rage grew with every miss, the audience roared louder, some in anger, some in disbelief. Nobles above watched with narrowed eyes, recognizing something terrifying: control, discipline, patience, traits no wild fighter could ever master. The monster swung again and again, faster now, blades flashing like storms of lightning, sand cutting into the air, but still the human dodged, bent, rolled, and slipped through the chaos, his hands never striking, his fists never thrown, only waiting, watching, learning. The crowd began to notice too, a silence creeping in between the roars, whispers spreading. He's not fighting, he's studying. At last the monster grew reckless. Its attacks wilder, its movements less sharp, rage boiling into sloppiness. And that was when Daniel moved, like a shadow breaking free of chains. He darted in close, his body sliding past the blades, his hand striking into the joint of the creature's shoulder. A single hit but precise. The metal joint sparked. The monster howled, staggering. Before it could recover, Daniel struck again, a blow to the other arm, another crack of sparks. The blade slowed. The beast bellowed in pain. The crowd screamed in shock. Daniel pressed forward. Each hit small, each hit perfectly placed on weak points, his hands faster than the eye could follow, like lightning breaking apart steel. Finally, with one last strike to the chest plate, the creature fell backward, its massive body crashing into the sand, its blades sinking uselessly into the dirt. Silence fell across the arena. No cheers, no jeers. Just silence, as everyone stared at the human standing over the fallen monster, his chest rising with calm breaths, his hands bruised but steady. He looked up at the nobles' balcony, meeting their eyes, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty, and in that moment something shifted in the galaxy. Fear rooted itself deep inside every watching heart. They realized this was not luck, not chance, this was skill, discipline, and willpower that no weapon could shatter. The announcer's voice cracked when he finally shouted, "The monster of blades is fallen." The silence broke into chaos. Some aliens screamed in disbelief, some in fear, some in awe. The nobles whispered urgently among themselves, sending messages, plotting what this meant, and above them all in the shadows the cloaked figure who had warned them before whispered again, "You fools, this is only the beginning. Humans are showing you what they are, and soon you will all understand." Down in the arena, Daniel stood over his fallen opponent, his shadows stretching long across the sand, the weight of the galaxy pressing heavier on his shoulders, and though he did not smile or raise his fists in triumph, the message was clear: no blades, no machines, no monsters could stop human hands. The arena floor had barely been cleaned of the fallen monster's broken body when the air filled again with noise, this time not from cheers but from angry shouts. The crowd wanted more. They demanded more. Aliens of every kind stomped their feet and slammed their claws against the rails, their voices rising in unison. "Not enough, not enough, send more, send them all." The nobles above hesitated, but pride and cruelty forced their hands. They could not allow a single human with no weapon to humiliate their galaxy's most feared beast, so the announcer's voice shook through the arena once more, trembling with both fear and command. "The human will now face not one, not two, but the champions of 5 worlds, all at once." The crowd screamed with excitement. The ground shook with their roar. Gates thundered open and 5 figures stepped onto the sand, each one famous, each one a legend in their own right. The first was a 4-armed warrior, with electrified chains crackling blue sparks in its grip. The second, a scaled serpent fighter with venom dripping from long fangs. The third, a massive brute covered in spiked armor carrying a hammer larger than most beings. The fourth, a swift insectoid with wings sharp as blades. And the fifth, a cloaked mystic whose hands glowed with a strange green light. Together they formed a circle around Daniel, 5 champions of different worlds, each armed with powers and weapons that had ended countless lives, and in the middle stood the human. No weapon, no shield, just his hands. The audience laughed and cheered at once, sure that this would finally be the end. Some even threw bets that the fight would last no longer than a single breath, but Daniel remained still, his eyes shifting calmly between each enemy. He lowered his body slightly, fists loose, breathing slow, and then the first move came. The brute with the hammer charged forward, swinging with crushing force. The sand erupted beneath his steps, but Daniel spun to the side, the hammer crashing into the ground with such force the whole arena shook. In that instant the serpent darted forward, jaws wide, fangs glistening. Yet Daniel caught its head with both hands and twisted, using its own momentum to slam it into the brute's chest. The crowd gasped, 2 champions colliding. Before the brute could recover, the insectoid swooped down, wings slicing the air. Daniel dropped low, rolling under the storm of blades. His hand shot up to strike the creature's fragile joint. One wing snapped, sending it spiraling into the sand. The 4-armed warrior was next, chains sparking like storms as they whipped through the air. Daniel weaved between them, sparks grazing his skin. Then with sudden speed, he stepped inside the storm, his hands striking the warrior's ribs, stomach, throat. In 3 quick motions, the creature staggered back choking, dropping one chain. The mystic finally raised his hands, green fire exploding outward, waves of heat rippling across the sand. The crowd screamed as the whole arena lit up in eerie glow, but through the fire Daniel surged forward, his body low, his eyes locked on the mystic's chest. He slipped past one blast, then another, until he was close enough to strike. His fist slammed against the mystic center. The glow faltered. The alien fell gasping, the flames vanishing. In less than a minute the arena that had been filled with chaos was silent again. All 5 champions lay broken, groaning, or unconscious in the sand. Daniel stood tall, his chest rising steady, sweat dripping but his eyes sharp. The crowd did not cheer this time. They did not laugh. They only stared, some with fear, some with awe. Nobles whispered furiously above, their faces pale. "Impossible. Not even our greatest armies could do this." One hissed, and he did it with nothing but his hands. Another spat, yet even as they spoke Daniel raised his fists one more time. Not in victory but as a warning, his voice finally breaking the silence, low but strong. "You think hands are weak, but these hands are enough to shape destiny." The crowd trembled at his words, whispers spreading through every corner of the arena. whispers that would spread across the galaxy, that humans did not need blades, did not need plasma, did not need weapons at all. They carried the most dangerous power inside themselves. The announcer stood frozen, unable to speak. And for the first time in the history of the arena, fear outweighed entertainment. The arena masters had no choice. Their pride was broken, their champions defeated, their crowd restless, whispers of human strength spreading like wildfire through every corner of the hall. Some nobles demanded the human's death, others demanded to study him, and some whispered that humanity must be feared before it grew stronger. The announcer's trembling voice rose again, but this time it carried something darker. The final trial begins, not against warriors, not against beasts, but against the will of the arena itself. And at once the sand beneath Daniel's feet began to shake. Deep rumbling echoes rolled through the ground. The crowd leaned forward in awe and terror as the floor split open, glowing light flooding upward, and from below rose a massive machine, forged from alien metals, taller than the walls, its body armed with every weapon known to the galaxy: blades, cannons, fire, acid sprayers, even energy shields. The crowd gasped. This was no champion, no living creature. This was the Arena Titan, built long ago to test armies, a machine no single being had ever defeated. It roared to life with a sound of thunder, its chest glowing with power. The announcer's voice shook as he explained, "If the human survives this, he will not just win, he will break the will of the arena itself." And then silence fell. Everyone waited. Daniel stood below the giant machine, his body small, fragile compared to the monster towering above him, his hands curled into fists, his breath calm, eyes sharp. The machine struck first, a blade whistling down like a falling mountain. Daniel moved, not away, but toward it, sliding under the crushing strike, sand exploding around him. The blade carved deep into the ground but missed him by inches. The crowd screamed. Daniel leapt forward, his fist slamming into the machine's leg joint. Sparks flew, a dent formed, but the machine swung again. Cannons lighting the arena with plasma fire. Daniel darted through the blasts, rolling, twisting, leaping, his body moving faster than the eye could follow. Every strike of his hand aimed for weak points, joints, seams, circuits. The Titan staggered once, then again, and the crowd gasped, "He's hurting it." Someone shouted. Nobles stared in disbelief, but the machine adapted. Its shields flared, covering weak spots. It unleashed waves of fire and acid, forcing Daniel back. The heat seared his skin. The fumes burned his lungs. Still he pressed on, his hands striking harder, faster, until finally, with a roar of effort, he leapt high, landing on the machine's arm, running up its massive body, dodging bolts of energy as he climbed, fists slamming into plates until sparks rained down. He reached the chest where the glow burned brightest, the Titan's core. The crowd held their breath as Daniel raised his hand and slammed it with all his strength. The sound echoed like thunder. Cracks spread across the machine's core. The Titan staggered, and with one final strike the glow shattered. Light burst outward, blinding the crowd. When the dust cleared, the giant machine stood frozen, its weapons dead, its body smoking, and then with a slow groan it collapsed into the sand, defeated. The arena shook with silence. Not a laugh, not a cheer, only awe. The announcer dropped his mic, unable to speak. Nobles looked pale and broken, their greatest weapon destroyed by human hands. Daniel stood tall, bruised, bleeding, but alive, his fists still raised, his voice echoing clear. Through the silence, weapons break, blades rust, machines fall, but these hands endure. Remember that. The words cut through every soul in the arena, fear and respect mixing in their hearts. Some whispered that humans were the most dangerous warriors alive. Others whispered that they must be allies, not enemies. And in that moment the galaxy knew. Humanity had proven itself, not with guns, not with blades, but with hands strong enough to defeat destiny itself.